Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. My name is George Binns, and I'm here with my co-host, Gail Burke. And we have with us tonight the only guy I know in government who lives up to his name, Angel Donahue Rodriguez. He is the assistant to Jerry Paracella, our state rep. And a little bit of a background. Several years ago, my granddaughter was away at college, and she is covered by Mass Health. She was out of state, got sick. So the school sent her to the local hospital. They took care of her, and then we started getting bills. And as smart as I was at the time, I knew that Mass Health does not have any co-pays or any basic costs. So I started chasing this down and didn't get very far. And mentioned to Jerry Paracella one day, who do I call next? And he brought up, talk to my man Angel. And it took about a year, if I remember. And I think you probably called everybody in the state. But eventually it got resolved. And that was the revelation to me that basically, I guess there's two real functions. One is to support, in this case, now it's the Veterans Affairs Committee, and also to respond to the constituents. So basically, what's your split in time? How much is taking care of people like me and taking care of Jerry's problems?
95% of it is making sure that we're taking care of the constituents. That's the representative's goal, and that's the main priority of the office, is to ensure that anytime that a constituent calls the office, that he or she is getting top quality constituent services, and that we answer any questions that we have answers to immediately, right away.
Well, what kind of questions do you get from?
They range anywhere between RMV issues with license plates.
What's an RMV issue?
RMV, the Registry of Motor Vehicles.
Yeah.
So we could get issues from the Registry of Motor Vehicles to one of the most common issues we deal with is taxes, with people calling the office trying to get in touch with Department of Revenue. They'll have certain mix-ups with Department of Revenue with filing taxes, and we try to be as responsive as possible to put them in contact with the right people. We look at ourselves as almost like a navigator of the state government to make the constituents' lives easier.
Do you have any interaction or anything to do with, for instance, people that have mental health problems and they need housing, for instance, group homes?
Yeah.
I have a brother who is in a group home, and I had to go through his social worker in order to get him in here. But is that part of the responsibility of you or the state rep?
We would be able to put you in contact depending on what the situation is with the right people. To say that we would be able to fix the matter right then and there, I think would be inaccurate, because as good as our staff is, we don't know the answer to every single issue. And so when somebody calls the office, we'd say, please allow us, 48 hours to at least research the issue so we can respond to you with the correct answer, because there's so many different parts of government. We can't possibly know who to contact right away and give you the correct information. Ultimately, that's the most important thing.
Well, the reason I ask is I happen to see my brother is affiliated with the North Shore Arc, and I think Jerry is kind of involved with them.
He's supportive of the organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to know.
No, we would put you in contact with someone over there if need be, to have them call you right away and explain to you what services they might be able to provide.
I think that's one of the problems with the public, though. They're not sure, because I certainly didn't know where to go. And fortunately, I had a wonderful social worker that worked with my brother. But I never would have thought to call a state rep.
But we welcome the calls. That's what our role is. Like I said, that's where the rubber meets the road in the office, and that's the representative's priority, is ensuring that that we have top-notch constituent services, and that we continue to provide that, because ultimately he was put in office by the voters of Beverly, and that's who he's there to represent and provide services to.
How big is your staff?
We have a total of there's a total of 3 of us.
Okay.
There is myself. There's a legislative aide, Cameron Doherty, and then a legal counsel to the committee, Thomas Statuto.
So how much of their effort is associated with the committee? And again, this is Veterans Affairs?
We all, the Committee on Veterans and Federal Affairs. I'd say we all dabble into the committee work because right now there are around 67 bills in the committee. Although it's not one of the larger committees, researching what bills have been drafted and interpreting them and making sure they're summarized takes a little bit of time. So we all dabble into the committee subjects quite a bit.
What are the big issues with the committee right now?
Right now, so we have our first hearing coming up on June 10th, and actually one of our hearings in July is going to be held in Battleship Cove over in Fall River. We'll be having a hearing on top of a battleship, which I think is pretty neat. So one of the big issues right now in the committee is, how do we deliver effective services to our veterans? Although Massachusetts is #1 in the nation as far as providing veteran services to our veterans returning home from war, there's still room for improvement. You're never going to have a perfect system, and there are bills that are out there ranging from giving tuition breaks to veterans, and then there are bills that are ranging towards housing issues. Helping the veterans with modified homes if they come home with a wound or are disabled. So those are some of the pieces of legislations we deal with.
There was an amendment by Representative Deal requiring that veterans be given priority over illegal immigrants for public housing. And it was to prevent the amendment from being voted on. And Jerry voted against, he voted for that, so the bill didn't go anywhere. And I just wondered if you knew why he would do something like that.
My understanding is that, and my recollection is that was on Valor Act 2 last session. The amendment had a subject that had to do with veterans, but if you look at what was actually written inside the amendment, it had nothing to do with veterans. I don't know. Again, the policy issues are more on the representative side. But if you look at the piece of legislation, it was a very comprehensive and good piece of legislation for veterans, and it ensured that Massachusetts stays #1 in the nation when it comes to veterans benefits.
Okay. I wanted to ask you, too, about this. We all know how bad this winter was, and with the MBTA. And Governor Baker wants to form a committee, an oversight committee, to make sure that the money that's given to them is being spent in the right way, to upgrade everything, to probably get rid of some of the deadwood that's there. The deadwood.
Yep.
People that aren't doing their jobs properly, because the MBTA was a mess this winter. And I just wonder how Jerry is dealing with this. Is he in favor of some of the changes that?
The representative actually is on record for voting for in favor of voting some of the reforms. Yeah, in the budget that the House passed in late April, it included a provision to suspend a 5-year moratorium on the Pacheco law, which is one of the staples of the governor's reform legislation. And there were some other pieces of legislation that the representative was supportive of.
Could you elaborate on the Pacheco law for those of us who don't?
So the Pacheco. So essentially, what would happen in the 1990s is they passed a law, and the Pacheco law basically. The way it was designed not to make it more difficult to privatize, but essentially to figure out, whether if the government decided to go and privatize, to ensure that.
That it was limited.
Not that it was limited, but to ensure that the money that they said that was going to be saved was actually saved. So that's basically the gist of the Pacheco.
So they're thinking possibly of privatizing the MBTA, or
the MBTA. There's certain aspects of the MBTA that are already privatized, such as the commuter rail and the ride. Which provides door-to-door services for disabled people.
But the MBTA, the governor proposes removing the MBTA from the reach of the Pacheco law. Is that correct?
For a 5-year moratorium, yes, and the House of Representatives
That's because
voted.
of the Commons Union.
I don't know. I don't know what the reason for that is.
That's what I copied off the internet today.
But that was. But I know the governor put the piece of legislation out there, and there were parts of the bill that were put into the House budget and put into the Senate budget, and the rest of the bill is making its way through the committee process, which is pretty common for that to happen.
When are they going to have to finalize the budget?
The budget has to be done before July 1. The fiscal year in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts runs between July 1 and June 30th.
Have they started some of the negotiations between the House?
conference committees were actually appointed today. The Senate finished up their budget last week. As a matter of fact, the Senate actually included that provision that you spoke about with the MBTA Oversight Board. That's actually one of the things that was included in the Senate's budget. So there were pieces of the governor's transportation reform bill that were included on both sides. What they end up being, the bills in conference. So
But does it have to go? It has to pass through the House as well.
It has to pass through. It has to pass through both chambers. Yeah.
Yeah, they both take another crack at it.
Yeah. So anything that comes out of the conference committee would be non-amendable. That's pretty common. That's something that happens at the state and federal level.
Yeah.
Why is the Massachusetts legislature? I'll put you on the spot. Among the states that passes the fewest bills?
So I don't know the specific answer to why Massachusetts passes the fewest bills, but I think it's important to remember that it's not about quantity; it's about the quality of pieces of legislation that you produce.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I say that in all seriousness because if you look at the Constitution of Massachusetts, and both at the federal and state level, the federal Constitution was modeled off the Massachusetts Constitution, and so and again, this is just my own personal feeling. I think the founders didn't purposely made the legislative process cumbersome to ensure that there was good debate on pieces of legislation. Because as I mentioned before, it's not about quantity; it's about the quality of the legislation that you put out.
Well, I always feel that Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate have way too much power. And I don't think that the founders envisioned that, or maybe they did, but it seems to me that Massachusetts, because it's overwhelmingly Democrat, there's not much of a balance there. And I wonder if that may be the reason that.
Well, I don't know particularly what the reason is. At the end of the day, I think it's up to the voters to elect the officials, and we did elect a Republican governor in Massachusetts. So there's that to keep in mind.
If you get into the statistics, the registered voters are 29% Democratic in the state, 20% Republican, and then 51% independent. And my complaint is there's nobody running as an independent that I can vote for. But that's another. So it's really trying to appeal to this middle group that is neither fish nor fowl kind of thing. And right now, it's the way it's been going is that once you're in, they seem to be in forever. And that's one of the systems that if we had Elliot here, we would instantly launch into a discussion of
term limits.
Well,
I'll ask the question. Do you think Jerry believes in that?
I don't know. I have not had a discussion with the representative over that.
There's no politician that's going to be in. Look at Marty Meehan. He was going to be in for 2 terms, and he did 6. And now he's going to run the.
Well, Paul Guanci said he believed in term limits.
Yeah, he's been there forever.
He's on our city council.
So I mean, it's one of these things that's just never going to happen because the system is already ingrained, and that's the way it is. But I want to get back to talking a little bit more about the services for constituents. You mentioned that you give them, usually can come up with an answer within 48 hours. I know in my own case, this was a long process.
It's a prolonged process. Mass Health is a complicated system.
Are there others like this, or is just Mass Health is the most difficult one to deal with?
I think it all depends on the issue that we're contacted with.
Yeah.
I think the circumstance that a particular constituent's in determines the length of how long that case might be open for. For example, in your case, it took us a year, but we got it done.
Yeah,
that's
very thankful.
But some issues can be resolved a lot quicker than others. It just all depends on what it is that the particular issue.
So when you go into one of these things, obviously you didn't know the Mass Health system, who to dial up the first day, and it's.
Well, I had just started when your case came up on my desk. So I think
stayed there.
I was I think I was only a week into the job.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Trial by fire.
You ought to talk to Jerry about that fest. But serious aside, though, when you start to get into one of these things, and like this one with Mass Health, that was around back and forth, and you eventually found the right guy that knew it. What kind of help can you get within the House system? Is there an oversight or a committee?
Well, the House by itself doesn't operate constituent services. The role of the House and the Senate is to legislate and to create pieces of legislation. But my role is to act as a middle person, or our staff's role is to act as the middle person to the executive branch, which executes the laws that we create. And the agencies that they have, the various different agencies, we would reach out to them. We actually now have a list of all the legislative liaisons for all the different state agencies that are out there. So if we have a constituent issue now, we can just call our legislative liaison, and we can present them with the problem that's been brought to us.
But you can cut through the red tape.
We can. I like to think.
Can't do.
I like to think that we can.
Yeah.
It can be complicated, but what our role is to make sure that the system doesn't look as complicated to people. We like to think of ourselves, as I mentioned before, as navigators of the system for our constituents.
Because I had some issues with Mass Health too, and I went round and round and round. My brother worked in a sheltered workshop, and he made probably $15 a week.
Yeah.
And every couple of years, I would get a notice that they were taking him off Mass Health because he was making too much money. So I had to go through Mass Health, and I tried.
Yeah.
And my social worker was wonderful. She knew who to contact in the Mass Health, and she got it resolved.
Well, I'd be happy if you give us a call next time, and we'd be happy to see what we can do to help you out.
Sure. Well, my brother's not from Beverly. He lives in Salem. But
we get some of those calls too sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean, it was very, very complicated and frustrating, and I mean, he was making too much money at $15 a week. I mean, who does that?
Well, those eligibility requirements are not set by the office.
No, I know. Yeah.
So,
but they're ridiculous.
Yeah. No. That one's out of our control. That's set at the federal level.
But these are some of the things that the constituents face, and they don't know where to turn.
Yeah.
How can you or Jerry or whoever make it known to the public that you are there? I mean,
we have office hours every other week.
Yeah,
we have office hours every other week. Thursdays we have them at the senior center. Next week we'll be having them at the senior center from 5 to 6, and then we have them at the senior center. So City Hall on Thursdays and the senior center on Fridays.
Now, when you go there, I know I went a couple of times when Mary Grant was in office. But do you get up and give a talk, or do you sit at a table and just talk one-on-one?
We sit there and talk one-on-one with a constituent. Yeah. And we've been having those now since the representative's been in office. So every other week, without fail, we're at, unless it's a major holiday or something, or in August when families are on vacation, we have office hours without fail from every other week, Thursday and Friday. Thursday at City Hall from 5 to 6, and Friday from 10 to 11 at the Senior Center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to these legislative liaison people. Are they working for a representative like you do? Or
no, they're working for the administration under that particular cabinet secretary.
So this particular Mass Health would have
Yeah, they would have two because
Yeah.
Mass Health is a very big system, so they'd probably have two.
So these are the people you can go to. Are their names published? Can the average person call one of these up or find them?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But they're a great resource to us, and they certainly make our lives a lot easier, in turn making your lives a lot easier. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Now, what do you do if somebody calls you with a problem, say with Obamacare? Do you get
With what?
With Obamacare?
Yep.
Do you get involved with that?
We do not. We not
With the exchanges or anything?
We do not. We do not get involved in that because we handle Mass Health cases, but we haven't had a constituent call the office and say, can you help me get on Obamacare per se,
Or get off of it.
or get off of it. We haven't had anybody, to my knowledge, contact the office in that regard. And there is a way that we do track the amount of constituent cases that come through the office. We have a database that allows us to be able to slice and dice any type of data that we'd like, and we keep track of which person in the office has been in contact with what agency, when, what time. Everything is time-stamped. So if a constituent calls the office and asks, what's the status of my case, or the representative asks what's happening with a particular constituent that's personally asked them, as you might run into him at the Y, he can answer that question, so we can provide him that information.
Now, when I came into Jerry's office on lobby day, it was about Common Core.
Yeah.
And we gave him information. He sat and talked with us for about 15 or 20 minutes. Has anything gone forward with him doing anything about Common Core, or has he gotten more involved with the Department of Education? What has
I didn't
happened?
sit on that meeting, so I don't
Right.
I don't know that.
Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with Common Core, because that's not an issue that's necessarily been brought before the office too many times from constituents in the office. So I have not had that discussion with the representative. I didn't sit in that meeting.
Well, what kind of veterans problems do you get involved with?
Well, the state administers Chapter 115 benefits, and essentially those benefits can help a veteran, whether it would be with housing assistance, whether it would be with payments for clothing, or payments for to help with college supplies and whatnot.
What kind of problems they run into? Is
Payments
payments don't show up, or
No. If a veteran, or if a veteran falls into hard times, there's an eligibility formula that's out there for the veteran, and that's that. So every Massachusetts is one of several states that has what they call VSOs, Veteran Service Officers. So there are a vast number of veteran service districts within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and Beverly has a veteran service officer.
Right.
So if a veteran would come in and say, I'm having a difficult time with something, or I've run into hard times, they can go and turn to their local VSO, and their local VSO can help them determine their eligibility.
who's the new VSO? It used to be Jerry Gillespie.
Yeah, it's David now. David.
Okay.
His last name is escaping me at the moment.
Yeah, because Jerry was very helpful with me getting
Yeah.
into some in bits and pieces. I
Yeah.
think. And as we warned you, time flies, so we're almost done. So thank you very much for coming, and we appreciate the fact that I personally appreciate the fact that you spent so much time on my particular problem. And,
I'm happy to do it. That's what our office is here for, and you'd find that all of our staff is accommodable to everybody.
Yeah.
That's good. We do have time for one more question,
Yeah.
I think. I think that you said that Jerry is now the chairman of the Veterans Affairs.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Now, what is your job, for instance, when a vote is coming up on something other than Veterans Affairs? What is your job, or what is the job of the staff in the office to prepare him?
So depending on what particular piece of legislation the House would be taking, we would draft him up a summary. And there's a calendar that's published online on the matters of the day when they do call a formal session, and we would present them with the calendar, and we would go over what to expect and what particular piece of legislation are.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we'd like to invite the audience to send us any questions that you have. Our website shows up every so often. We are planning a couple of shows in the near future. Next week we will be taping with Dave
David
Manzi relative to his discussion about what's the most economical way to solve the problem with Briscoe in the middle school. The superintendent also wants to show up and do a show with us talking about his approach to the middle school. And we still have that other show to do with the superintendent and the assistant superintendent to discuss Common Core.
And we
So-
have Seth Moulton, who may be here in July. We're hoping to get him here.
So
in
we have a
July.
number of shows coming up that will hopefully pique your interest. And at the same time, there's always space up here. We can always put another chair.
Yeah.
If somebody really wants to agree with us, disagree with us, or bring up a totally different subject. So we're amicable to most of these things. And this is one of the things I think that needs to happen more often, is to get some different opinions as to what's going on in the city, what's going on at the state level, and we welcome anybody who has an opinion that wants to voice it.
I agree. Well, thank you all for being here, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, Angel.
You're very welcome.